Young Xyloth let out a cry as his parents hurled him into the gloomy alien wilderness and then took off in the direction of the unknown. This sad infant who had been abandoned would receive assistance from no one on Zephyria other than the humans. During the time that the distress signal was being transmitted through the communication system, Captain James Thompson of the United Earth Space Fleet was firmly grasping the armrests of his captain's chair position. The letter, which was delivered in a poor form of the English language, appealed with anyone, to save a Zephyrian child named Xyloth who was in trouble. He had been mercilessly abandoned in the perilous woods that were located outside of the city-state of Xanthar, and he had been left to die there. Thompson's chest tightened slightly. The fact that he was a parent who had lost his wife to death gave him a strong desire to safeguard this child from another planet. Even if it meant putting himself in danger of a clash with the merciless Zephyrian High Council, he had no choice but to take action. In defiance of orders, Thompson steered his ship, the United States Foreign Service Valiant, in the direction of the restricted planet Zephyria. As the Valiant began to enter orbit, tensions were at an all-time high. Following a horrific struggle that occurred many years ago, the Zephyrians had forcibly removed all humans from their world. The stakes were too high for Thompson to ignore, despite the fact that he was aware that he would encounter severe opposition in his efforts to save little Xyloth. In the absence of any intervention from the human race, the defenseless kid would undoubtedly perish in the harsh environment of the alien wilderness. The future of a life that had been completely innocent was in jeopardy. In a clearing, the courageous shuttle successfully landed, causing the glowing underbrush to become more compact. Thompson was the first to emerge, holding a plasma gun in his hand. The members of his crew dispersed behind him and began to examine their surroundings. People, never lose your cool. The children are located someplace within this forest based on those coordinates. Be on the lookout for traces, but don't let your guard down. This location, according to intel, has more teeth than a Denebian Deathjaw convention. Private Rodriguez indicated the ground with his finger. I hope you don't mind my modest footsteps here, sir. They appear to be new. Thompson got down on his knees to investigate them. A young child was the owner of the tracks. Both of them had to be Xyloth's. Have a sharp eye, Rodriguez. Everyone, please be quiet. We continue along the path, but with caution. Cannot say what it is. The dense air was pierced by a howl that filled the air with chills. The shapes moved quickly and low to the earth as they dashed between the trees. The shadows revealed a set of eyes that were green in color. Get in touch. Thompson barked at the prowlers that were dead ahead. The wolf-like animals emerged from the underbrush completely covered in teeth and fur that was matted. At the same time that Thompson's team was engaging the creatures, plasma fire lit up the woodland. Private Hawkins was attacked by one of the prowlers by a pounce. He managed to avoid being hit, but the claws of the beast slashed across his leg, drawing blood. Hawkins erupted in agony and fell to the ground. Sergeant Nguyen yelled out that Hawkins had been struck. The prowler was struck in the chest by the plasma bolt that Thompson delivered after clenching his teeth and firing his weapon. As it fell to the ground, it was already dead. Even when Hawkins attempted to stand, his damaged leg crumpled under him. It is impossible for me to walk, sir. To hell with it, you can't. I will not abandon anyone in this journey. With the help of Thompson, the young soldier was brought to his feet, and Thompson slung Hawkins' arm over his shoulder. Please, Nguyen, take note. Everyone, let's get moving. In order to get further into the forest, the team followed the footprints that were relatively small. Although the bioluminescent plants gave off an unearthly glow, there was no indication that Xyloth was present. As a signal for the group to come to a halt, Nguyen raised his fist. Something is seen in the distance, sir. It appears to be a wreckage pile. They approached with extreme caution. A small Zephyrian shuttle had crashed and was mostly buried in the underbrush when it was discovered. The hull was ripped open, revealing the interior, which was somewhat dark. Following the transfer of Hawkins to Corporal Janus, Thompson went inside the wreckage of the vehicle. With the exception of a few scattered things, a child-sized boot, and a blood-stained shirt that had been pulled out, the cabin was completely empty. Thompson yelled out that this can only be the vessel that the child was traveling on. No bodies, however. Perhaps the accident did not kill him. The sky was shattered by a piercing screech. An enormous winged figure, resembling something from a nightmare, descended from the skies and landed on the ground. Blood drew the attention of a Zephyrian sky terror, which was lured to the threat. "Please take cover inside the shuttle." The shout of Thompson was heard. As the sky monster dove, its claws gouged enormous furrows in the dirt at the same time that the team scrambled inside the debris. Although they began fire, the hide of the beast was too thick to penetrate. Lightning bolts of plasma erupted from its scales. Thompson tore a plasma grenade from his belt and wrenched it out. "Make sure that your fire is focused on its wings. Put a stop to it." The squad concentrated their fire, pounding the wings of the Sky Terror with massive amounts of plasma. As it struggled to take flight, it let forth a crazed cry. After priming the grenade, Thompson threw it into the air. The explosion tore through the creature's chest, and it collapsed in a mound of smoke. Nonetheless, the explosion caught the attention of others who were not interested in the situation. As they emerged from the trees, a group of Zephyrian troops with weapons that had been trained on humans emerged. Commander Xantar, who was standing at their head, had a contemptuous expression on his face. "Do you have the audacity to invade our sovereign area, humans? Your deaths will come quickly if you surrender at this moment." Xantar's chest was the target of Thompson's weapon as he took a proactive stride forward. "Does not take place. For the sake of the youngster, Xyloth, we are here." "No, we are not going to go without him." Santos scoffed at the situation. "The boy is not yours to claim in any way. His name is Zephyrian, and you have no control over what happens to him. I am making it a concern of mine." There was a tightening of Thompson's finger on the trigger. "I won't allow you to condemn a child who has done nothing wrong to die." As they prepared to fire, the soldiers stiffened up. People behaved in the same manner. As it waited for the first shot, the woodland could be seen holding its breath. The silence was broken by the sound of a weak, terrified voice. "Please assist me." Everyone's attention was drawn to the underbrush. There was a small Zephyrian child named Xyloth, who was shaking and staring through wide eyes. As soon as Thompson saw the small figure that was shaking emerge from the incandescent underbrush, his heart skipped a beat. It may have been a Zephyrian child, but it was no older than 6 years old on Earth. In addition to being underweight and filthy, the boy's clothing was tattered and damaged. Fear and tiredness were visible in his enormous, bright eyes, which were drawn together. The toddler appeared to be drawn to the human warriors, despite the horror he had experienced. First, he took a hesitant step forward, and then another, his eyes fixed on the faces of the people he did not know but who were friendly. Thompson lowered his rifle in a measured manner and knelt down, extending his hand to the little child who was terrified. "Little one, how are you doing? It is not a problem. It is safe for you now." The boy exhibited a momentary pause, his frail body tensing up as if he were about to run back into the woods. In spite of this, Thompson's soothing tone and friendly grin appeared to provide him with a sense of comfort. After choking back a sob, the young child hurried forward and threw himself into the arms of the captain, clinging to him as if he were something that could save his life. With the youngster in his arms, Thompson could feel the boy's frail body trembling with the sound of his cries. "Shh, don't worry about it. I am getting you. You are not in danger." A mixture of amazement and perplexity could be seen on the faces of Commander Xantar and his soldiers as they observed the spectacle. The image of a human soldier who had been through severe combat offering solace to a Zephyrian child who was crying was not something that they had ever anticipated they would see. Xantar dropped his weapon after a considerable amount of time had passed, thereby signaling for his people to do the same. The expression on his face was a mixture of fury and grief as he took a step forward. According to Xantar, the boy's name is Xyloth, and his voice was filled with a range of emotions. His father was a nobleman who was just put to death for treason against the High Council, and he is his biological son. In order to punish Xyloth for the crimes committed by his father, he was sentenced to exile in the woods, which was a death sentence for someone of such a young age. Xantar was the target of Thompson's gaze, and his eyes were flaming with rage. What type of monstrous beings would allow a child to be put to death in such a manner? Xantar appeared to be struck and flinched. My father, Zargan, the chief counselor, decided what would happen to the youngster. I pleaded with him to have pity, but he had no intention of listening to me. It appeared as though the commander of the Zephyrian was preparing himself for his next comments by taking a deep breath. Your ship received the distress signal from me, Captain Thompson. I am sorry for the inconvenience. I was unable to turn a blind eye and watch an innocent youngster suffer as a result of the transgressions of his father. I was aware that you humans would be the only ones who would be both courageous and foolish enough to put everything on the line in order to rescuing him. While he was holding Xyloth in his arms, Thompson remained still. Despite the fact that his face was crushed against the captain's neck, the kid had become quiet. Commander, I am the father of a son of my own. Had a son of their own. A rare ailment ultimately took his life 2 years ago. I was unable to help him at the time, but I am now able to save Xyloth. An expression of comprehension and respect could be seen on Xantar's face as he nodded. Bring the young man along with you, Commander. Please bring him back to your planet, where he will be protected and adored as he grows up. He is deserving of the opportunity to live a true life, free from the brutality and insanity that Zephyria possesses. The eyes of Thompson became wider. Xantar, feel free to join us. For assisting us, you will be subject to penalty, which may possibly include execution. We are able to provide you with global asylum. Xantar waited a moment before returning his gaze to his soldiers. Their movements were shaky, and it was obvious that they were divided between their allegiance to their commander and their obligation to the High Council. Xantar finally caught his breath, squared his shoulders, and took a step forward. I shall gladly accept your offer, Commander. After everything that I've done and after witnessing the extent of my father's cruelty, I am unable to go back to Zephyria or my hometown. I am going to accompany you to Earth, and it is possible that there I will discover a method to assist my people and to show them a more beneficial way of life. As a sign of respect and gratitude, Thompson showed his appreciation by clasping Xantar's arm. Hello, Commander, and welcome aboard. Let's get out of this area as quickly as possible. Hawkins was being transported on a handmade stretcher as the gang started the lengthy journey back to the shuttle to get back to the shuttle. Even though he was fatigued, Xyloth remained in Thompson's arms, his small face still calm and peaceful. A bizarre turn of events had just taken place beneath the luminous canopy of the bioluminescent forest, and it looked as if the forest was acknowledging the strange turn of events by whispering and sighing around them. The shuttle was eventually visible to the exhausted group as they made their way through the bioluminescent underbrush. In order to reach his communicator, Thompson moved the weight of Xyloth that he was carrying in his arms. Here I am, Thompson, the Valiant One. We have the package, and we are prepared to begin the extraction process right away. We need to get the medical bay ready because we have several injured people. A crackling sound of static was heard, and then the voice of Commander Davis filled the air with a tight and tense atmosphere. We are now dealing with a situation up here, Captain. It appears that a force of Zephyrian warships has just emerged from hyperspace and is currently surrounding us. Right now, they are demanding that we surrender immediately. Thompson muttered beneath his breath a curse. It appeared that Zargan was more accurate than he had anticipated, which was a disappointment to him because he had planned to leave the planet before the Zephyrians were aware of what had occurred. All of a sudden, the communicator began to flicker, and a new image emerged before it. It was the frowning visage of the Governor Zargan himself. While he was glaring at Thompson, the Zafirian leader's eyes were icy and ashen in appearance. The words Sir Captain Thompson came out of Zargan's mouth, and his tone was filled with disdain. Are you seriously under the impression that you could take away my grandson and turn my own son against me without encountering any consequences? As a result of the fact that you humans have committed an act of war, you shall be demolished altogether. While Thompson's mind was racing, his jaw was tight. Although the Valiant was a strong vessel, she was not capable of withstanding a whole Zafirian war fleet. Zargan was well aware of the fact that they were outmaneuvered and outgunned. Nevertheless, Thompson was not the type of person to give up without a fight. He was tasked with safeguarding a group of individuals, rescuing a child, and honoring a commitment, and he also had one final desperate card to play. His eyes were blazing with the intensity of his gaze as he turned to Davis. I need you, Commander, to send out a message which will be aired on all frequencies. Inform them that the Valiant has been infected with a human virus that is fatal to humans. The majority of the crew has already passed away, and the remaining members are close to leaving this planet. Davis's eyes widened, but she gave a gloomy nod in response. I, the captain, will have Dr. Patel offer descriptions of the symptoms, and I will make them sound as horrifying as possible. We are going to have to sell this. With a stern expression of resolve on his face, Thompson shifted his attention back to Zargan. Have you caught that, the Chancellor? If you move any closer, you run the risk of exposing your whole fleet to a plague that will make the Black Death appear like a case of the sniffles. Would you be willing to subject yourself to such risk? It appeared as though Zargan was seeking advice from his advisors, as his face became pale and his eyes darted nervously to the side. In spite of the fact that he was yelling at you, there was a hint of hesitation in his tone of voice. Who am I? Thompson inquired in a chilly manner. Would you feel comfortable placing the lives of your people on the line for that? The two leaders stared each other down over the vastness of space for a considerable amount of time, which was a tense moment. After that, Zargan immediately took control of the transmission. Davis exhaled a trembling breath while standing on the bridge of the Valiant. The plan is working, Captain. It appears that the Zafirian ships are retreating, thereby increasing the space between themselves and us. Thompson gave himself permission to smile, albeit a sulky one. That's good. Come on, let's make a sail. Make sure Patel makes a note of the symptoms. To the greatest extent feasible, make them graphic and unsettling. I want it to be broadcast on a loop, with audio, video, and everything else included. With a nod, Davis got to begin on his task. Within a matter of minutes, the airwaves were filled with the professional and dispassionate voice of the medical officer, who described in painful detail the ravages of the fictitious sickness. Lesions, hemorrhaging, and organ failure are all depicted with terrible images of the courageous souls who have passed away. In actuality, members of the crew who gave their time and wore heavy makeup. In the midst of the broadcast, Thompson observed the Zifrian fleet that was participating in the census. Despite the fact that they were maintaining their position, he was able to detect their uneasiness even from this distance. All of a sudden, a small blip separated itself from the fleet and started moving in the direction of the planet. Thompson scowled as he focused his attention on the picture. It was a single Zephyrian shuttle, which was both small and quick, and it managed to sneak through the barricade with some degree of expert ease. Xantar, who was looking over Thompson's shoulder, produced a muffled gasp as he watched. He responded in a voice that was a mixture of optimism and anxiety, saying, "That is my mother's personal shuttle. She was one of the few people who stood up to my father's abusive behavior, and she is a member of the High Council. Perhaps she came to assist us in some way." A wave of relief washed over Thompson as he nodded his head for approval. "Thus, let us not keep her waiting any longer. You should continue with that broadcast, Davis. The two of us are going to make a break for it." With Xyloth still holding to Thompson's neck like a lifeline, The remaining members of the group crowded into the shuttle. Thompson couldn't help but be amazed by the unexpected turns of events that had led them to this point in time as the little ship took off and skimmed low over the bioluminescent canopy. During their frantic attempt to survive and seek justice, their human captain, a Zephyrian commander who had turned against them, a youngster who had been traumatized, and a rebel councilwoman all came together. Thompson was aware that the stakes were all too real, despite the fact that it seemed like something out of a holonological fiction. As they broke the atmosphere and flew towards the Valiant who was waiting, Thompson gripped Xyloth even more tightly and quietly vowed to defend this innocent child no matter what the cost might be. Although he had suffered the loss of his own son, it was possible that he could achieve some degree of redemption by rescuing Xyloth. A boy who had seen an excessive amount of sorrow in his short existence was looking forward to experiencing the moon, which stood out as a beacon of hope against the star-strewn void. Beyond the world, there was a blue and green diamond that promised protection, healing, and a fresh start for the child. A gentle smile appeared on Thompson's face as he gently removed a strand of Zilith's hair off his sleeping face. "Kid, you are going to absolutely adore it here on Earth," he murmured. "No more suffering, and no more anxiety. Nothing except love, joy, and as much ice cream as you can possibly consume." That was the first time in a very long time that Thompson allowed himself to believe that everything was going to be okay. This occurred when the shuttle docked with the Valiant, and as the great ship turned her prow towards home. Following the shuttle's landing in the clearing, Thompson and his squad exited, with Xyloth being held in the captain's arms for the purpose of providing protection. It appeared as though the bioluminescent forest was holding its breath. The engine of the shuttle was the only sound that could be heard, and it was a gentle one. The downdraft from the thrusters of the second vessel caused the glowing vegetation to become a flurry of activity. Suddenly, the second craft broke through the canopy. With a strained expression, Thompson's hand reached for his sidearm in an automatic manner. However, as the ramp of the shuttle began to descend, a person that was already recognized appeared. "Mother," Xanther sobbed, his voice cracking with the intensity of his feelings. Zara, the High Counselor, walked forward with her robes flapping in the breeze when she did so. A mixture of determination and relief could be seen carved into her expression, which was so similar to that of her son. While she was dragging him into a strong embrace, she spoke the words, "Xanther, my brave boy. You have my utmost reverence." The expression of appreciation in her eyes was clear as she turned to Thompson. "My heartfelt gratitude goes out to you, Captain, for everything that you've done. You have put everything on the line in order to protect a child who is innocent, to take a stand against tyranny and brutality. You are a model of bravery." With Xyloth's head resting against Thompson's shoulder, Thompson moved Xyloth in his arms. The youngster appeared to be fatigued and sleeping. "I did nothing except what was appropriate, ma'am. No child should be forced to endure the consequences of their father's actions." Zara gave a slight nod, her visage becoming more stern. "This day marks the end of my husband's reign of terror, having been compelled to witness for an excessive amount of time as he has driven our people into the ground and as he has twisted our once magnificent civilization into a mockery of itself. I will no longer be forced to do so." At the same time, she reached into her robes and pulled out a little data drive, which she then pressed into Thompson's hand. "This provides you with all of the information that you require regarding the Zephyrian fleet, including their vulnerabilities, their blind spots, and a secure exit process from the system. Make good use of it, Captain." A flicker of hope began to ignite in Thompson's chest as he curled his fist around the drive. "I am grateful to you, advisor. With this, there is a possibility that we have a chance." The air was shattered by a tremendous boom, which occurred before they could say anything else. They felt the ground shake beneath their feet, and the trees swayed as if they were caught in a storm on the wind. "I don't even know what that was." The rattle of Sergeant Nguyen's gun was audible as he yelled. The color left Xanther's face. "It is also my father. He is present." The armor of the Shvirian warriors shone brightly in the bioluminescent light as they emerged from the forest line in a swarm, as if they had been waiting for their moment. With a visage contorted with wrath, Chancellor Zargan went toward them where they were standing. He yelled, "Xanther," his voice pouring with the poisonous substance. "Those treasonous wretch, you. Do you have the audacity to betray their own blood, their own people?" Xanther took a step forward, putting himself in the middle of the human beings and his earthly father. "Do not, father? I have the courage to stand up to a dictator. To fight for what is right and for the future of our people is something I am willing to do." The plasma pistol that was at Zargan's hip was dropped from his hand as he let out a growl. "Then you will perish alongside these filthy human beings." Xyloth was thrown into Xyloth's arms as Thompson shouted out, "Go." Xyloth was forced into Xyloth. Arrive at the shuttle stop. They will be resisted by us. For a fraction of a second, Zara was hesitant. The focus of her gaze was on Thompson's. A tremendous deal of comprehension was transmitted between them at that very time, the knowledge that they both possessed of the sacrifices that are required to be made for the sake of the greater good. After that, she ran away while carrying Xyloth in her arms, and she was on her way to the shuttle. For the purpose of concealing their escape, Xanther followed, his sword ready. Thompson and his men arranged themselves in a line, with their rifles aimed at the Shvirians who were proceeding forward. Lightning bolts of plasma filled the atmosphere, causing the vegetation to smolder and the ground to become scorched. Private Rodriguez fell to the ground with a hole in his chest that was smoldering. In spite of receiving a blow to the leg, Corporal Janus continued firing while he was propped up against a tree. Despite the fact that Thompson was experiencing a searing agony in his shoulder, he clenched his teeth and was determined to continue fighting. No matter the cost, he had to buy Zara and the others some time to get away from the situation. It was only out of the corner of his eye that he caught a glimpse of the shuttle taking off, its engines roaring as it climbed toward the heavens. His face was punctuated by a furious and confident smile. They had successfully completed the task. It was safe for Xyloth. On the other hand, there was no time to rejoice. An unceasing flow of armor and plasma continued to come from the direction of the Shvirians. It was one by one that members of Thompson's team were being eliminated. The helmet that Dienwyson wore was broken by a plasma bolt when he fell. As Hawkins, who was already injured, suffered a shot to the gut, he crumpled, and his rifle fell from his fingers, which were unable to control it. Following that, it was just Thompson, standing by himself against the power of the Zephyrian army. Zargan moved forward, his weapon aimed at the human captain's skull at a specific level. As the Chancellor spewed forth the word "kneel," his tone was thick with disdain. "If you go down on your knees before your superior human being, I will grant you a speedy death." When Thompson laughed, it was a sound that was pure defiance. "I do not bow down to anyone, and certainly not to a monster such as yourself." Without paying attention to the excruciating agony in his shoulder, he rushed forward. Zargan was taken aback by the sound of his rifles blaring, which occurred once, twice, and 3 times. His expression was one of stunned amazement. The Chancellor collapsed, leaving 3 holes in his chest that were smoldering. In spite of this, his warriors continued to advance with their weapons blazing even as he was dying. Thompson saw the plasma bolts tear through him, and he felt the blood of his life spilling out into the bright forest floor. However, even as he fell, his eyes sought the sky, seeking the faraway glimmer of the shuttle that was transporting Xyloth to safety. As his voice began to fade, he muttered, "Live well, little one's life. Stay alive and find joy. I have no further requests than that." And with a final trembling breath, the hero of the United Earth Space Fleet, Captain James Thompson, disappeared into the darkness that was waiting for him. At a tremendous height, the shuttle docked with the Valiant, and the enormous ship launched itself into hyperspace, leaving the Zephyrian fleet in the rear. Following the events that transpired, Zara assumed the position of leader of the Shvirian people, and Xanther accompanied her in this leadership role. Together, They started the long and painful task of reconstructing their society, which involved moving away from the path of cruelty and oppression. And on this planet, tiny Xyleth got a new family and a new place to call home. He was brought up by Thompson's sister and her husband, and he developed into a wonderful young man. His heart was filled with the same bravery and compassion that had characterized his savior during the course of his life. After a number of years had passed, Xyleth finally put on the uniform of the United Earth Space Fleet, and he did so with a sense of pride and understanding of his mission. He would follow in the footsteps of the guy who had sacrificed everything in order to save him, the man who had taught him the true meaning of what it is to be loyal and courageous. The legacy of Captain James Thompson continued to carry on even after he had passed away. In the life of a little boy from Zephyria, in the hearts of everyone he had impacted, and in the annals of history, where his name would be remembered for all time as a brilliant example of the finest that humanity has to offer. You have arrived at the conclusion of the tale. If you found this tale to be entertaining and would like to show your support for us, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel. And for each and every comment that has the number 88, I will give each and every one of them my heart. Your time is greatly appreciated.